Greetings, friends. Welcome to our Sabbath Bible study for the month of November. I'm Dr. Terrell Jones, Vice President of Salem International Association, and today we're going to turn our attention back toward health, and we're going to discuss water. You are not sick, you're thirsty. And in order to help us to get a background context concerning water, I want to read from the book Back to Eden, pages 102 through 104, and then pages 108 through 110. History of water cure. Water has been used from time immemorial for remedial purposes. It is not a modern discovery, speaking of the use of water to treat disease. The books of the oldest medical authors make numerous references to the use of the bath in combating disease and to its good effect. The learned Greek Hippocrates, who lived about 500 years before Christ, was the first man who wrote much on the healing of disease with water. He is referred to as the father of medical literature. He used water extensively, both internally and externally, in combating disease. At a very early period, the Egyptians practiced bathing considerably, as you will find in sacred history. If Pharaoh's daughter had not gone down to the river to bathe, Moses would never have been found in the rushes. Ancient Egyptians' pictures found in the tombs show people preparing for a bath. Bathing held a prominent place in the law that was prepared by Moses under divine instruction for the government of the Hebrew nation. The relation of the bath in the treatment of leprosy would naturally lead us to believe that it was used for curative effects. And it would be impossible to believe that an agent held in such high regard as a preventative of disease should not be esteemed as a useful remedy. The ancient Persians and Greeks erected stately and magnificent public buildings devoted to bathing. Darius the Persian's baths are spoken of as being especially remarkable. The Romans surpassed all other nations in the costliness and magnificence of their bathing facilities. Some of their greatest works of architecture were their public baths. The baths were supplied with every convenience for increasing the use and luxury of bathing. Kings and emperors struggled for superiority in perfecting and enlarging those sanitary institutions. Some of them were large enough for 20,000 bathers to enjoy simultaneously. At one time, the number of public baths in Rome reached the mark of nearly 1,000. Even Nero, who was a public disgrace, did at least one good act when he erected a beautiful public bath. Two noted Latin physicians, Celsus and Galen, praised and glorified the bath as being invaluable. That was almost 2,000 years ago. Galen said that exercise and friction must be used with the bath to have a perfect cure. If only the regular physicians of a century ago had followed the practice of Galen as described in his works, what a lot of suffering would have been saved. Doctors would have refreshed and revived their patients who were fever-stricken with God-given water instead of giving drugs, quinine, etc., and letting them be consumed by the fevers that parched their lips, disorganized their blood, and many times ended their suffering with their lives. The Emperor Augustus was cured by water remedies of a disease which had thwarted all other remedies. The Arabians had always been looked upon as a wandering horde of wild men, but about 1,000 years ago they had a physician among them that was some of the most learned men of that age. They were very sensible and enthusiastic about the efficiency of the bath. Rhazes, one of the most prominent of them, described a method that would scarcely be outdone by present-day water treatment. The baths were used in pestilences. In Constantinople, the Turkish baths were used extensively in the 15th century. In the year 1600, public vapor baths were numerous in Paris. They were connected with the barbershops, as are many in this country at the present time. Dr. Bell of Paris stated that in connection with the city hospitals, nearly 130,000 baths were given in one single year to outside patients. Undoubtedly, those in the hospitals were steamed and bathed as well. What a marked contrast with the present day hospitals in this country, where the use of water is sadly neglected. Such neglect is inexcusable. And I will just add to this that the use of water in our hospitals today is given, but you have to buy it. If you go in under dehydration, which will be under consideration today, they'll hang a bag of either normal saline or lactated ringers, and you have to pay for that. But to open the windows in a hospital room is nearly impossible. I don't know of any hospital I've been in where you can get fresh air and free use of water. These are heaven-given remedies. And so our modern medical system is set up to receive payment for every treatment that is rendered. And of course, the Seventh-day Adventist hospital system, which was not set up in that way, has adopted these modern methods and is no different than the hospitals of the world. And so going over now to page 108, talking more extensively about water. Water is one of the most abundantly supplied elements of nature for remedial uses. The blood and brain of the human body are composed of about 4/5 water. The fluid secretions and excretions are more than 9/10 their weight in water. The chemical composition of water is represented by the chemical formula H2O, which means that it is composed of two gases, hydrogen and oxygen, proportionately, 2 volumes of the former and 1 of the latter. Both are odorless, colorless, tasteless, and transparent. Oxygen is the greater supporter of combustion in life. Hydrogen is one of the lightest gases known. Uses of water. Water exists in the form of ice when below 32 degrees Fahrenheit. When at 212 degrees Fahrenheit or above, it is changed into a vapor. Between 32 degrees and 212 degrees, it is a liquid. Water possesses the greatest amount of heat required to elevate temperature to a given number of degrees of any substance. Water also absorbs more heat by elevation than any other substance. When passing from the ice to the liquid state, it absorbs a great amount of heat from the objects it comes in contact with without any elevation of temperature. Water conducts heat much more readily than air and communicates its heat to bodies with which it comes in contact, but it also abstracts heat when at lower temperatures. We know hard water, we hear the expression hard water. When water is hard, it will not produce a lather with soap. The hardness is due to salts of lime, gypsum, and chalk, and others which make it unfit for use externally and especially internally. Mineral water. These waters contain solutions of salt, of magnesia, iron, and others, as well as iodine, arsenic, and sulfur, which give them a medicinal taste, and they have been much used for cures of chronic ailments. These waters are absolutely unfit for drinking or cooking purposes. They contain no particular value for cleansing. One would naturally know that water, which is unfit to cleanse the outside of the body, could not be of much benefit as an internal application. With the exception of pure air, there is no other element of nature that is as important in sustaining life as pure water, has as important a relation to the human system. A person can live longer on water alone than if deprived of it. A large proportion of our food, in variance to the type, contains from 15 to 90% water. Water undergoes no change in the body, but is absolutely essential to the performance of the vital functions, as it enables various organs to perform their work so that life is maintained. The circulatory system is one that is especially dependent upon water. Water is the solvent which floats the blood corpuscles, nutritive and waste elements which the blood is carrying. By the aid of water, nutritions enter the blood and are conveyed to the fibers of the intricate human mechanism where repair and growth are needed. There is no other element which is so adapted for this exact purpose as water. It circulates through the most delicate capillaries without friction and even passes through membranes into parts that are not accessible by openings. Water is continually passing away from the body from some organ of elimination, either skin, kidneys, or lungs. We're constantly losing water. If the kidneys become obstructed, we all know there is serious trouble. The dry air entering the lungs all the time absorbs moisture from the pulmonary membranes. Therefore, it is necessary to supply the body with plenty of pure water at all times. The average person eliminates about 5 pints of water in 24 hours, and an equal new supply must be made in order to preserve the fluidity of the blood. People whose work is of laborious nature, which necessitates profuse sweating, naturally require more water than others. It would also be noticed that the diet has a great deal to do with the amount of water demanded by nature. People who eat largely of animal products and use salts, pepper, spices, and condiments require considerably more water to dissolve and cleanse the system of these unhealthful things. People who use mostly fruit, vegetables, grains, and avoid the use of stimulating foods and drinks require less water, as a great many vegetables and fruits are composed of more than half water. Water is the only substance which really quenches thirst. Other beverages quench thirst in proportion to the amount of water they contain, and many beverages cause you to lose more water from digestion than the water they contain, and are unwholesome to the extent of injurious elements that are added. Now, these are things that we know about water. Some of us, this may be information that you've heard the first time, but for most of us, we know at least this much about water. But what we're going to discuss from this point forward today is going to be aspects of water that you did not know about, most of you, and you'll find it quite interesting. So with that in mind now, we'll pray that the Lord will give us enlightenment to help us to be able to use the information that will be brought forth today. Let us kneel as far as possible. Our Heavenly Father, we are thankful, Father, for the meeting that we're now having, the opportunity, Lord, to discuss that which you have supplied so abundantly in nature. You have given us water freely. It falls from heaven. It's all in our bodies. The lakes, rivers are full of it, Father. But sometimes we don't understand the importance of it. Something so simple can be so profound. Help us to understand now how it relates to our health. Be with us. May the Holy Spirit fill each person's heart and mind today, that we may not only retain the information, pay attention to what is being said, but that we'll glean enough of this to have an excess amount to help someone else, Father. Because we're going to find out that most people are dehydrated to serious consequences. Have mercy upon us now. Bless everyone and be with the speaker as well. In Jesus' name, we thank you in advance. Amen. Once again, I'd like to welcome all of you to our November Bible study today. And I'd like to review a very helpful acronym, New Start. New Start. And we know that there are 8 general laws of health, nutrition, eat a healthy diet of grains, seeds, fruits, vegetables, nuts, and herbs. 80% fruits and vegetables, 20% nuts and seeds and grains. There's your N, nutrition. Your E in the New Start is exercise to improve your cardiovascular health. The third is the W in new, which is water, which will be our subject under consideration today. Drink enough based on your body weight. And we know that for most of us, that is half an ounce for every pound of body weight. So if you weigh, just say 200 pounds, you should be drinking 100 ounces of water. And I know for some of you say, wow, well, that's a lot of water. Yes, it is. Sunlight, the S, sunlight. Get enough sunlight to produce vitamin D. T, temperance. Practice moderation in those things that God allows. Complete abstinence in those things that he does not. And a balance on the things that he allows. Balance. A, air. Breathe fresh air to purify your lungs. The only element that is more critical to life on earth and more abundant than water is air. Rest. Get enough rest to allow your body to repair and reset. And finally, T, trust in God to reduce stress levels. So that is the acronym New Start, the 8 laws of health. Today, our focus is on water, and we will begin by reading Revelation 22:1. That will be Sister Jones. Sister Kerr, she would read John 4:13 through 14, and then Sister Blakeney, Jeremiah 2:13. These are some general scriptures concerning water.
Revelation 22, verse 1. And he showed me a pure river of water of life, clear as crystal, proceeding out of the throne of God and of the Lamb.
Sister Kerr, if you could read John 4:13 through 14, I think you're muted.
Thank you, Brother Jones.
Yes.
John 4, verses 13 to 14. Jesus answered and said unto her, Whosoever drinketh of this water shall thirst again. But whosoever drinketh of the water that I shall give him shall never thirst, but the water that I shall give him shall be in him a well of water springing up into everlasting life.
Amen. Sister Blakeney.
Jeremiah 2, verse 13. For my people have committed 2 evils. They have forsaken me, the fountain of living waters, and hewed them out cisterns, broken cisterns that can hold no water.
Thank you. Thank you very much. When you put all those verses together, it says to me in just a brief statement that the Lord has water for us that will perpetuate not only life on this earth, but the life to come. Eternal life is likened unto waters that if we drink, we will never thirst again. The reference in Revelation, it says that out of the throne proceed the water of life. So water is associated with life. And in fact, if you look at NASA and various other, astronomical agencies that are out looking in the universe, the first thing they look for is water. When they look on planets, in fact, they've got a couple of probes going to, I think, the moon Galen around Saturn and then Titan. And they're thinking that water is underneath the surface of these ice-bound moons. And they're thinking that wherever water is, life is, because it's an invariable fact on Earth that wherever there's water, there's life. And wherever there is not water, life cannot exist. But if you notice the reference that Sister Blakeney read, the last reference, is that we have the tendency to hew out for ourselves cisterns, meaning we have various means to substitute water, things that we think will substitute for not only the spiritual water that Christ spoke of, but the physical water that he spoke of as well. And so we're going to find out today quite a bit about the physiological ramifications and metabolic complications of chronic unintentional dehydration. Dehydration being the primary cause of many serious diseases. Now, what I want to have you focus your attention on today is the idea that modern medicine now, I'm not speaking against any doctors per se or your doctor in particular, but just the general direction that Western civilization has gone with water. They have not understood certain diseases. In fact, many diseases and the symptoms and signs that these diseases cause, they say that they are of unknown origin. But when these diseases are looked into, it's found that most of them have their etiology in dehydration. In fact, if you have hypertension, you know, or you should know, your doctor should have explained to you that all hypertension medicine mimics the effects of water in the body. So the blood pressure medicine plays with the kidneys and gets the kidneys to think that there's water in there, and then it dumps salt. And then the person's blood pressure comes down because the pressure is leaving the vessels. Now, one would look at that and say, well, why doesn't one just drink water? Why do you go through all of this, hocus pocus, this circus routine, and when water is really the root cause? Well, one must ever remember now that the medical establishment, its focus is not on the root cause of disease, but on the symptoms. And so understanding that is very key to our being able to have better health and to be able to use water in such a way that it will benefit us and our family members and our friends as well. Now, I'm going to introduce to you now a name that in a book that this discussion today is based largely upon. The gentleman's name is Dr. Batmanglij. Now, that is my southern pronunciation of his name, but I heard another person pronounce it a little bit different than that. But his book is called Water, You're Not Sick, You're Thirsty. He has two other books. After the Bible study, Sister Jones will download on Salem National website about a 10-minute video in which his books are brought up. It's another doctor who is bringing this forth, but you'll see the books, and I encourage all of you to get the books and read the books. It will help you to understand quite a bit more. Today, we're just going to have a surface introduction to the information, but it will be enough to open your eyes to the true power of water, the dawn of a new medical era. Only if you begin to suffer from a health problem that may eventually kill you will you begin to search high and low for an explanation and solution to your predicament. Until you get sick, you cannot really appreciate what an emotionally draining impact a doctor's visit and the pronouncement of his or her serious findings has on the life and soul of another person. Let us hope you or anyone you care for never confront such a situation which thousands daily face. The reason we have a healthcare crisis in America today is because many diseases prematurely devastate and kill millions of people. At the same time, the healthcare crisis cost us about $1.2 trillion as of 2001, and it is predicted that this cost will increase by 11% every year. It is true that we are scientifically the most advanced nation in the world and spend billions of dollars a year on medical research. If you look at any recently published medical textbooks, however, you will see upon page after page explanations about diseases that kill. Yet when the authors of these books reach the point of having to shed light on the causes of these killer diseases, they confess etiology unknown. In other words, friends, you look at they give the prognosis. The prognosis is, well, these are killer diseases. Then when you look at the diagnosis and the reason, the etiology, the reason why the disease came forth, they have to explain, well, we really don't know. Well, my question is, if you don't know what caused the disease, how can you cure it? Remember what Nebuchadnezzar told the wise men in Babylon? He said, if you can't tell me my dream, there's no way you can interpret it. But yet we go to the doctor expecting a cure for a disease that he confesses he doesn't understand. This means that most doctors do not know the cause of the major diseases of the human body, yet society has given them license to prescribe various treatments that often do not benefit their patients, but can slowly and prematurely kill them. The good news is that this ignorance is about to be addressed. What you're about to hear today is new knowledge as far as the AMA is concerned. But remember my opening comments. Water's been used for millennia. But modern medicine has forgotten it, can't make money off of it, especially in a capitalistic society where money is all important. But this represents a new perspective within the science of physiology, not a form of science used by drug manufacturers, but the discipline of science that defines the way living tissues and organs within the body work naturally. This discussion today deals with some important health problems and the cause and natural correction or the cure of these problems. When the cause and cure of any health problem becomes clear, the use of excessive language, tongue-twisting jargon, and drug medications becomes unnecessary. So let me say now, on the outset of the information, especially as it relates to hypertension, we're not taking the place of your doctor. We're not saying today that when you hear the information in its totality, that you come off the Bible study and swear off of your medication. We're not saying that. What we are saying is that when you follow the recommendations, your blood pressure goes down, you go back to your doctor, they'll test your blood pressure, it will be normal, and he will take you off of your medication. So don't take this as a substitute for your doctor. Don't try to be a doctor yourself, but be aware of your own health condition, and as your blood pressure decreases, you just naturally won't need the medication. After all, you weren't born with high blood pressure. You weren't born with problems, so something had to occur along the way. And so what you will hear today is based on extensive clinical and scientific research. The author has researched, studied, and written about the information in this book that I'm quoting from and many other books that he has written for a 22-year period, in addition to his medical training, which began in 1950 when he entered St. Mary's Hospital Medical School of London University. But let me say now, quickly, that means nothing because he has had success with water treatment if it won't benefit you. But what I say to you now, entering into this information, is two things. One, you're going to have to listen. And two, you're going to have to apply it. Because I know that there are some people listening to me right now who have hypertension. I know it is. I know there's some people listening right now who are on medication. I know it is. And so if you implement the information, you see your blood pressure coming down, give glory to God. The topic we are about to discuss is the physiological ramifications and metabolic complications of chronic unintentional dehydration as the primary cause of many serious diseases. Some say it is the greatest breakthrough in modern medicine. I know that's a lot of verbiage. Let me put it so simply that a 12-year-old child can understand it. What is the difference between a plum and a prune? Water. A prune lacks it, right? What is the difference between a grape and a raisin? Same thing, water. What the author brings forth is that not only do fruit take on a different physiological structure when dehydrated, but so do your organs. The organs inside of your body become prune-like, become raisin-like when deprived of water, because they go through a physiological transformation, a pausing, a wrinkling. Simply put, it doesn't just change the way they look, but it also changes the way they function because they're dehydrated. And so that is the premise under discussion today. This simple presentation about some of our modern health problems is an introduction to the eventual science and logic-based transformation all over the world. It is prepared with the immediate shot in the arm needs of society in mind, particularly for the 15 million asthmatic children whose parents urgently need to understand the cause of this disease and its simple, cost-free prevention and potentially life-saving treatment. So not only are we going to deal with hypertension today, we're going to deal with asthma and also mental illness. Remember, the brain is the most water-based organ that we have. And if it goes prune-like, you're going to have some behavior that may be diagnosed as mental illness when all it was to begin with was dehydration. But let us not get ahead of ourselves. Let us not digress. Where did modern medicine go wrong? The greatest tragedy in medical history, in my opinion, is the assumption that dry mouth is the only sign of the body's water needs. Now, what did I say? That your sense of thirst is your greatest sign of dehydration. Now, we believe that. Somebody says, look, you need to drink more water. What's our first reaction? I'm not thirsty. And so we're not drinking water based on our physiological needs. We're drinking water based on our thirst perception. Now, I want you to think back to something I said just a few moments ago. If your brain has become prune-like and it is dehydrated, where does your thirst perception begin? In your brain. So that part of your brain has become compromised and it's not reliable to indicate to you what you need as far as your water intake is concerned. So you're going by a sensor, Bro Larry, on the dashboard that's no longer functioning. Your dummy light, your check engine light is no longer coming on because the bulb is blown, to put it in simple terms. So God knew that. So guess what God does? God has the headache come on. You pay attention to that, but a lot of us won't even listen to that. A lot of us go get a Tylenol. When the cause of the headache was not you didn't have enough Tylenol, but that you didn't have enough water. You see where we're going with this. And so the many symptoms that we face in every organ are majority cries for dehydration. It's amazing. It's amazing. Let's look at some of the mistakes and mistaken assumptions that have cost society dearly. One, the whole structure of modern medicine is built on the pitifully flawed premise that dry mouth is the first and only sign of dehydration. This false premise is responsible for the lack of understanding about various painful health problems that results in premature death to many millions of people, especially children. They suffer because they do not know they are seriously thirsty. Modern-based medicine is structured upon the simple dry mouth mistake that became established many years ago. In 1764, Albrecht von Haller, a German, first claimed dry mouth as a sign of thirst. Nobody saw dry mouth as a sign of thirst until 1764, not as a leading sign of dehydration or thirst. In 1918, Walter Bradford Cannon, an English doctor, supported Haller's views. Since he was an influential person, his views became fashionable and are reflected in accepted scientific literature to this day. Frenchman Morty Schiff, however, had claimed in 1867 that thirst is a general sensation. It is no more a local sensation than hunger. We now know that Haller and Cannon were wrong, but since theirs were the views that took root in the infrastructure of medicine, the same mistake has been passed on from one generation of medical students to another until the present day. This traditional flaw in the scientific understanding of the human body's water regulation altered the path of medicine. Schiff understood the human body better. Actually, dry mouth is not a sign to rely on. The body uses a different logic. To be able to chew and swallow food and to facilitate and lubricate this function, ample saliva is produced, even if the rest of the body is short of water. In any case, water is too important to the body to signal its shortage only through the experience of a dry mouth. The human body has many other sophisticated signals to indicate when it is short of water. The body can suffer from deep dehydration without showing a dry mouth. Dehydration produces severe symptoms, even to the point of causing life-threatening crisis without dry mouth being present. Modern medicine has confused these symptoms of internal localized droughts, dehydration in various organs, and has confused them and misidentified them as various diseases. As a result, toxic medications are prescribed to treat diseases rather than dehydration. Somebody will say to me, well, Dr. Jones, toxic medication. What do you mean toxic medication? Well, this is what I mean. I'm not saying do this, but if you unscrew the cap of your medicine, you put all of them in your mouth and drink water behind it, you'll be dead in a few hours from overdose. Dry mouth is one of the very last indicators of dehydration of the body. By the time the mouth is dry, it becomes an indicator of water shortage. Many delicate functions of the body have already shut down and prepared for deletion. This is exactly how the aging process is established, through a loss of enzyme functions through dehydration. Anybody who is dehydrated, they look old. You know, if you drank alcohol earlier in your lives, when you get off of a binge, the next morning you dry mouth and you look at yourself in the mirror, you look bad. Think about what your internal organs look like when dehydrated. A dehydrated body loses sophistication and versatility. One example is juvenile diabetes, in which the insulin-producing cells of the pancreas are sacrificed as a result of persistent dehydration. They claim it an autoimmune disease. They say, the child has autoimmune diabetes. His body's immune system is turning on itself, when that's not what is happening at all. What is happening is the body is sacrificing those cells to cannibalize the water that is within the cells, because they would die otherwise. And so it's using the pancreas, the water that's in the pancreas and the sodium bicarbonate in the pancreas to preserve life. And the medical establishment says, well, his immune system, he has type 1 diabetes. He has diabetes. Asthma is another one, where the bronchial passages are so dehydrated that if the air were to go through it in full force, it would blister and bleed and make the bronchioles and the alveoli within the lungs bruise and bleed. So the lungs swell up and make the air come through more slowly, so the person can live. Asthma. When if they would drink water, not just one glass and say, oh, that didn't work, but get on a systematic approach to drinking water, to proper metabolic hydration, they would find over time, and not a long period of time, if they keep it up and do it consistently, that the symptoms would alleviate. The second mistake is that in the basic science of medicine, the thinking that water is a simple substance that only dissolves and circulates different things is flawed. Water is not a simple inert substance. It has two primary properties in the body. The first one is its life-sustaining properties. The other, more important, role of water is its life-giving functions. Modern medicine recognizes only the life-sustaining properties of water. In other words, it only recognizes that water floats things around. It doesn't recognize that water in and of itself is life-giving, life-imparting, life-sustaining. That is why chronic, unintentional dehydration is ultimately an unrecognized, life-threatening process. You need to recognize and understand the process to save your health and your life naturally. 3, the third serious error in medicine is the premise that the human body can regulate efficiently its water intake throughout the lifespan of the person. As we grow older, we lose our perception of thirst and fail to drink adequately until the plum-like cells in vital organs become prune-like and can no longer sustain life. We lose portions of our bone. They call that arthritis. We lose portions of our mind. They call it Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and dementia. We lose portions of our muscles. They say, oh, they're getting older. They're just losing muscle mass. And remember, all of these things that we're discussing now, they'll tell you in the end of their dissertation, they really don't know why it's happening. They can tell you what is happening, Sister Jones, but they cannot tell you why. We need to recognize the onset of dehydration and its manifestations to prevent the irreversible stages of the process. The fourth nail in the coffin is the present day medicine. It is the idea that any fluid can replace the needs of the body through medicine. This is a major problem at present. Some of the manufactured beverages in common use do not function in the body like natural water. I'm going to say a few. I'm not trying to pick on any product, but we love that Boost. We love that Gatorade. What's the other? We love that Ensure. And when we drink that, we feel that we're getting something that is necessary for us to have, when if we saved our money and went and just drank water, we would be much better off, because Boost, Ensure, Pedialyte, Gatorade do not function in the body as water does. If it did, God would rain Gatorade. It would be Gatorade in the lakes and the rivers and the streams. But alas, there's no Ensure in your tap. There's water in your tap. And so, if we begin to understand the natural reason some plants manufacture caffeine or even cocaine, you will then recognize the problem. So you drink a Coke. It used to have cocaine in it until, I think, 1932, the Pure Food Act. That's the coca in the cola. It was coca. It was cocaine in Coca-Cola. People were high all the time. And then in 32, Roosevelt comes in and he enacts all these alphabet agencies, and one of them is the FDA. And they come up with the Pure Food Act, and they take cocaine out of Coca-Cola and they substitute it with something that's even more addictive, caffeine. Caffeine, the only thing that's more addictive than caffeine is nicotine. In fact, caffeine may be more addictive than nicotine. I don't recommend either. And plants produce them, and the reason why plants produce caffeine is to keep the bugs from eating the plant. And if they eat the plant and eat enough of it, they'll die. But in small doses, in titrated doses, it's stimulating. And we love that stimulating. We love that cup of coffee because it gives us a boost. We love that Mountain Dew because it gives us a boost. When we do not realize that our bodies are hydroelectric plants. And this electric force in our body is maintained through water. Now, I think the Lord has your attention, but what I want to do now is look at a little bit of the biography of Dr. Batmanglij and how he stumbled across this universal truth. Now, he's something like Benjamin Franklin. Benjamin Franklin didn't create electricity, did he? It already was here, right? When he flew the kite up and had the key on it, he just did what? He discovered it. He didn't invent it. Dr. Batmanglij did not invent the use of water. He just discovered it. Because if you go back to the Bible, remember Naaman? Remember Elisha? Naaman told Elisha, go down and dip in the river 7 times. So water cure has been a part of God's movement, but God's people have wandered after the world. And so we have lost many of the knowledge that we had. Just digressing a bit, I remember as a child, my grandmother would use natural remedies. And I would that I paid closer attention to things that she gave us when we got sick. The only thing I took away from it was castor oil. And I think that my children and grandchildren wish that I wouldn't have took that. But she didn't. She would go in the woods and get roots and leaves and stems. And these things would deal with arthritis and joint pain and all kinds of different headaches. And so the knowledge of how to live close to the earth has been with us from the beginning, but it's a knowledge that we have sadly lost. And so let's now look at the biography of Dr. Batmanglij, who is an Iranian dissident. He discovered the effectiveness of water to cure acid reflux and peptic ulcer diseases in 1979 while awaiting death, while on death row in 1979 in Iran in the Evin prison. History tells us that every so often, through basic discoveries of the applied techniques of nature, important leaps of progress have become possible. Humankind, because of these fortuitous happenstances and flashes of insight, has unraveled many of the secrets employed in its creation. One such happenstance seems to have revealed itself in 1979. I, Dr. Batmanglij says, had become a political prisoner of Islamic revolutionaries and was being held in the Iranian prison of Evin. While facing the possibility of execution, I discovered one late night that 2 glasses of water could relieve even the severest abdominal pain associated with peptic ulcer disease. A prisoner needed medication for his excruciating ulcer pain, which had him doubled up and unable to walk by himself. 2 friends were supporting him. The guards had not responded to his repeated pleas to be taken to the prison hospital. It was after 11 at night when he was brought to me. I was a prisoner myself and had no medication to give the man who was truly in agony. I explained to him that I had no medicine to give him. His face showed even more pain than before. Instead of medication, I gave him all I had, 2 glasses of water. Within minutes, his ulcer pain became less severe. In 8 minutes, it disappeared completely. Now, inserting just this brief thought, you think of the multi-billion-dollar-a-year industry that is produced in the United States alone through antacids and digestive aids. If you go in the grocery store, there's a whole section relegated to Pepto-Bismol, Imodium AD, a whole section relegated to these. Well, this confirmed for me, continues Dr. Batmanglij, the abdominal pain relieving effect of water in the disease condition. I had relieved my own abdominal pain with water during a period of solitary confinement when I refused food for several days. I encouraged one after another the prisoners who had this same classic pain to take water in its place, in the place of medications, that was sometimes available. During the ensuing 2.5 years of my incarceration, I successfully treated well over 3,000 stress-induced peptic ulcer disease cases with tap water only. And now, bear in mind, now this is in prison where these people are on death row. I don't know anything more stressful than that. Somebody say, well, Doc, nothing could be more stressful than my job. Well, try death row. You can quit your job unless you're in North Korea. But if you're on death row, you're there. You're locked down. There's nothing more stressful than that. He was getting good results under stress as high as death row. Fascinating. It became obvious to me that these people were really and only thirsty. They were presenting their dehydration in the form of a painful crisis situation that we in the medical profession had labeled a disease condition. To put it in my terms, what these people were doing, their bodies, they weren't listening to their bodies telling them that they were thirsty in the early stages. So the body had to show its manifest, its dehydration in a form serious enough that they would really listen. Peptic ulcers. Burn a hole through your stomach. And there's a physiological reason why. And my purpose today is not to set the physiological basis, but to awaken our awareness to this. As a last defense at my trial, Dr. Bob Mangelis continues, about 15 months into my imprisonment, I presented a scientific article to be released for publication. I told the judge that even if he had me shot, to please not lose the information. It is the greatest medical discovery in history. I said, by then I had already treated a few hundred fellow prisoners in the confined prison block where I was housed. The judge later came to me and said, you have made a tremendous discovery. I wish you luck in the future. That was the first indication that I had a future and could continue my work alive. As acknowledgement of my discovery, I was not executed, but given a 3-year sentence. My life was spared because of what I had discovered in the prison. All my personal assets, however, were confiscated. After 23 months, the prison warden told me the authorities had discovered I was not the bad person they had been led to believe, and they were considering an early release for me. I thanked him, but said I wanted to stay in prison a while longer. I was in the middle of clinical observations on the effect of water as a treatment of various stress-induced health problems, including bleeding, peptic ulcer conditions. I explained to him that as a sort of stress laboratory, Evan was unique. Needless to say, the warden was surprised. He thought he was doing me a great favor by wanting to release me before the end of my sentence. He agreed that my work was important. However, and that I should be given the opportunity to complete what I was doing. I have for some time believed that my coming to prison had not been a chance event. I was destined to make my discovery that the human body has sophisticated crisis calls for water when it is stressed and becomes dehydrated. I stayed in prison an additional 4 months and reached certain clinical conclusions that now needed scientific explanations. After 2 years and 7 months of imprisonment, I was released with an official acclaim for my discovery. During my prison time, I gained much new understanding about the physiological effects of water and its relationship to many disease conditions. It all started with abdominal pain. I published the first announcement of my discovery in the Iranian Medical Association Journal while I was still in prison. A translation of the article was sent to America and was eventually restructured for publication as a guest editorial in the Journal of Clinical Gastroenterology in June of 1983. Sister Jones is showing my battery being low. I don't know if I'm plugged up right. You may want to check that. So while incarcerated, Dr. Bob Mangelis treated over 3,000 cases of stress-induced peptic ulcer. He discovered that the inmates and guards were presenting their dehydration in the form of peptic ulcers. He discovered that the human body has sophisticated crisis calls for water when it becomes dehydrated, and its cells become dehydrated, which we term disease. Thank you very much. And we know that Psalm 139:14, Sister Jones, would you read that for us? Psalm 139:14.
Psalm 139, verse 14. I will praise thee, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvelous are thy works, and that my soul knoweth right well.
Thank you, Sister Jones. Thank you very much. We are truly fearfully and wonderfully made. And so the physiological effects of water and its relationship to many disease conditions, specific disease conditions, we'll begin to discuss now. The various symptoms and signals the body produces in the organs are diagnosed by doctors as various disease conditions. The explanations that follow are based on clinical observations made in one of the worst stress laboratories in the world. These observations have given birth to a new physiology-based explanation of how diseases of the body occur. My findings have been presented at several international gatherings of scientists. Detailed scientific explanations that support my findings have also been published. It does not require a detailed knowledge of science to understand that water should be used to prevent and cure certain dehydration-produced disease condition. Nor does the use of water as a medicine, quote unquote, medicine, require food and drug administration approval. Water is the main source of life, and everyone knows about it. Still, there is shameful ignorance, friends, about the health dangers we expose our bodies to when we do not drink enough water. Our saving grace is that the human body understands the role of water in maintaining its physiological and physical well-being, even though mainstream medicine does not. To put all that into a brief statement is dangerous. You know, we often hear, well, what you don't know won't hurt you. You ever heard that? But that's not true. What you don't know can kill you. And in this instance, it's certainly true because we have been led to believe we're so nonchalant. You know, we say, oh, I'm thirsty. You know, I'll drink some water later on. I'll drink some water when I get up in the morning. I'll drink some water. I'm thirsty, but I feel we don't realize that when we get to that point, our organs are physiologically changed. Sometimes irreversibly. Our saving grace is that the human body understands the role of water in maintaining its physiological and physical well-being, even though mainstream medicine does not. It seems we doctors have not been well informed about the different functional relationships of water in the human body. We have been caught in a most embarrassing situation. We do not yet know when the human body is truly thirsty. We do not understand what happens if the body does not receive adequate water on a regular basis. I want to read that again. Modern medicine does not yet know when the human body is truly thirsty. Now you put that one in the front of your mind and meditate on that. Your doctor doesn't really understand when you are thirsty, when you are dehydrated, nor does he understand what happens to the body when it does not receive water on a regular basis. So what we're talking about now is good health. And when we talk about health, listen carefully. When we talk about health, what we are really discussing is the proper functioning of our organs. Health isn't just some general statement, oh, I'm in pretty good health. Well, how are your organs functioning? If your organs are not functioning properly, you're not in good health. The current practice of clinical medicine is based on the application of pharmacological chemistry to the human body. At medical schools, more than 600 teaching hours are allocated to the use of pharmaceutical products. Only a few hours out of that, all those years of instruction, are allocated to instructions on diet and food. It seems that in most disease conditions, medical educators are trying to force the test tube understanding of chemistry into the human body. The trouble is, pharmaceutical or chemical products do not cure most disease conditions, nor are most of these products safe for long-term use. In fact, many people are on a lifelong regimen of Prilosec. You all know what that is. It's a PPI. It's a proton pump inhibitor. They're on a lifelong use of Prilosec by their doctors. If you read the box, it will say only used for 14 days. Now, the question that we all must answer is, who is right? If I'm on Prilosec, I read the stated proper use of the product by the manufacturer. It says 14. Read it, look it up, Google it, look it up, read it. 14 days. But I've been on it for 3 years. And usually what happens is, what happens with a proton pump inhibitor is that it shuts down the production of acid in the stomach. This is very dangerous because then you can't kill off bacteria. So you're susceptible to all kinds of infections because you're on a proton pump. You're shutting down some function. That's what allopathic medicine does. It shuts down functions of the body. What naturopathic medicine does is stimulates. You take a hot bath or friction rub, a salt glow. You go out in the sun. It stimulates your body. You exercise. It stimulates. When allopathic medicine, it shuts down the function. The cholesterol drug is Lipitor. What it does, somebody said, well, we got my cholesterol down. You know, I had a cholesterol problem. You're still eating and living and eating all that old greasy pork and fat and chicken and all other stuff you ate. And you didn't stop doing that. But you got on Lipitor and you said, oh, my cholesterol numbers are good. Yeah, they're good because Lipitor destroys liver cells, thereby shutting down the function of the liver and the production of cholesterol. So when we understand how allopathic medicine really works, then we would be wise to know how to move away from allopathic treatments to naturopathic treatment. But here's the situation. Naturopathic treatment take a long time. You've been all your life getting in the hole, but we want to take a pill and get right out of it. My head hurts. I got time to drink water for 6 months to get straight again. I need a pill. I got to go to work in the morning. Well, there's something for you to think about, friends. It's something for you to think about. And so not only are these pharmaceutical concoctions unsafe for long-term use, they only temporarily mask and silence the outward manifestations of the problem. No matter how seemingly scientific, sophisticated, and appealing the justifications for the use of these chemical products might seem, they often do not remove the underlying medical problem, except for the use of antibiotics in infections. People with hypertension who begin treatment with diuretics or other chemicals are not cured. You ask your doctor when you take your lisinopril if you're cured from hypertension, Brother Willis. Saying that, you know what the doctor will tell you? He'll say, you got to be on it how long? for the rest of your life. So you're never really free. I hear, and that's money, Sister Marta, that's money. And I hear these people, and I'm not going to say Seventh-day Adventists, but I do hear Seventh-day Adventists say it, that Jesus has set me free. He paid it all on the cross. Well, why did he not pay for that hypertension that you have? Was he not able to pay for that? So we need to really be honest with ourselves and take hold of our condition and be aware that just as we, in many instances, Laodicean surrenders his spirituality to the doctor, to the preacher, we, in many instances, surrender our thinking to the doctor. So the preacher deals with the soul, the doctor deals with the body, and we just float on through life in that comfort zone, neither hot nor cold. We're told that we must continue these treatments for the rest of our lives. We often need to supplement the diuretic and use other types of medication at the same time. People with rheumatoid arthritis are not permanently cured by any of the analgesics on the market. They have to use analgesic medications for the rest of their pain-filled lives. No diabetic is cured. No person with myasthenia gravis is cured. No person with muscular dystrophy is cured. How is it possible that, despite extensive research, no cure for any of the preventative conditions such as heartburn, dyspepsia, back pain, rheumatoid arthritis, migraine headache, or asthma has been found? Mighty quiet in here. Mighty quiet. Dehydration eventually causes loss of some functions and produces damage, which we know as pathology. Remember, we're back to the example of the prune and the plum. Okay, you look at the plum, it's full-fleshed. You bite it, the juice gushes out. But the prune is dry. Now, listen, don't take the wrong thing from what I'm saying. Somebody said, I'm done with prunes. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that when you eat the prune, your body can supply the water that it needs, and it can rehydrate itself based on the water in your body. But what I'm telling you is check your back and go look in the mirror. You're not like a camel. You have no hump of water on your back. You have no excess source of water. The only water you can get is the water that you drink. Unless you get sick, go to the hospital, they put it in your vein, they're going to charge you for that if you make it out. You know, a lot of people go to the hospital for simple things that never make it out. There are diseases in hospitals, sepsis, botulums, all manner of infectious diseases are in the hospital because people in the hospital are what? They're sick. They're infectious. That's why they're in the hospital. Well, serious friends. So, the various signals or symptoms produced during severe and lasting dehydration have been interpreted by doctors as various disease conditions, here it is, of unknown origin. The signal, however, is usually for water shortage, and the local damage is because of water shortage, because doctors don't recognize chronic dehydration as the original cause. The disease conditions receive all sorts of explanations and labels, depending upon the organ that is in and the pain you feel. And of all of them, they are said to have an unknown cause. Asthma, unknown cause. Diabetes, unknown cause. Alzheimer's, unknown cause. Parkinson's disease, unknown cause. And yet we're running to the individuals who cannot tell us why we have these diseases as if they have the answers. Because doctors don't recognize dehydration as the original cause, the disease condition receives all sorts of labels. This is the basic mistake that has distorted the truth in medicine and devastated people needing professional advice and guidance for their health issues. This is the crack through which all past research on the origin of disease conditions has fallen. Chronic dehydration dehydrates our organs. It is likened to dried fruit. The cells of the organs begin to wrinkle and their innermost functions are affected. If you look at a person who's dehydrated on an MRI, you can see the doctor say, well, his kidneys are atrophied. That's the term they use. His liver is atrophied. His lungs are atrophied. His brain is atrophied. Now, if your brain is atrophied, can you think straight? How can you? And let us ever remember that is the mind. The mind is the place where God meets us at. So somebody will say, oh, that's nothing. I'm not worried about that. Well, don't you want to have a good temple where you meet your Savior at? Don't you want to be able to communicate effectively? I made up my mind a long time ago. I don't want to do anything that is going to inhibit the function and the purpose of my body to thwart what I was originally created to do. Every one of us was made to do something that nobody else can do. People tell me all the time, I have people who I consult with and people who I talk to, and I digress a bit now. This is sort of more of a mental discussion right now at this moment, but it's important. And the same thing is true for you. No matter how many proliferated degrees a person may have behind their name, no matter how good they may be at any given thing, you don't have to hang your head because you are the world's foremost expert on you. I said that to somebody one time. They said, yeah, but you don't know more than God. We're not talking about God. We're talking about people on this earth. Don't nobody on this earth know more about me than me. And the same thing is true for you. So when you go to the doctor, that ought to hold true there. You should know more about your physical situation than the doctor. The doctor really don't know what you're doing, but you know. Then you may go in there and tell the doctor a little tale. You may not be honest with the doctor. You know what you're eating. You know what you're doing. You know if you're getting enough rest at night. You should be well acquainted with your physicality. And so chronic dehydration then produces organ damage. Imagine a juicy plum picked from the tree and left exposed to the sun or wind. It becomes a prune. The dehydration of the plum produces the shriveled interior and wrinkled skin that are typical of a drying fruit. Loss of water causes the internal and external structures of living things to change. But that dehydration in a fruit, be that dehydration in a fruit or in a person. So when a thing, no matter what it is, lacks water, its physical structure changes. And just saying that has made me thirsty. Pardon. Thank you very much. There are up to 100 trillion cells in the human body. Of a human being. Depending on the area where the dehydration has settled most, the cells in that region begin to wrinkle and their inner functions are affected. A shortage of water in any region is reflected by different signals that denote dehydration and are the body's indicators of its local or general thirst. At present, these indicators of dehydration of the body are not understood and are treated as indicators of disease conditions of unknown origin. What are the common indicators of dehydration? What happens to our bodies when we don't drink enough water? What is enough water? Well, we've established early that that's half the body weight in ounces. We now need to find the answer to these three important questions, one of which we have answered. A must do before we begin. You need to turn on your brain's logic powers and put aside any preconceived ideas you might have. Whatever you have read about health matters in the past probably does not reflect the true importance of water to health and well-being. From my perspective, there are three different sets or sensations that signal local or general thirst. At most of these stages, the presenting symptoms are reversible without much damage. The first is the general perceptive feelings. They include feeling tired. Now, what we're talking about now, we're drilling down. We've established that thirst is a late sensation of dehydration. But we've dealt with the negative, but now we want to accentuate the positive. How is it that we can recognize thirst early? Feeling tired. How many people do you hear, I'm tired? I mean, not if you've exerted yourself, that's understandable, but you just have to you get up, you wake up tired. Feeling flushed, feeling irritable, feeling anxious, having anxiety, feeling dejected, feeling depressed, not sleeping well, feeling heavy-headed, having irresistible cravings, and having a fear of crowds and leaving the house. Those are early signs that you are dehydrated. So the body enters what Dr. Bob Mangelige calls drought management programs. Let me explain to you this way. Think of your body as a municipal location, and your brain is the hospital. Your stomach is the playground, and there's no water in the city, but just a little bit, just enough to supply one of those two areas. Is the city going to supply the hospital with water or the playground with water? Which one? The hospital. So your body is going to deal with the most urgent organs first. So one of the early signs of dehydration is inability to digest food. Because you don't have to have food right away. So the body shuts the stomach down. And then notice you have then gas. Because you're not drinking enough water. And nobody can tell you because you won't listen. So you suffer. You wait, you go to the doctor expecting that he'll explain it to you. He doesn't understand. So you have to come to a meeting like this and let the Lord explain it to you. The second group of conditions that represent indicators of dehydration are the body's drought and resource management programs. There are 5 distinct conditions that denote states of dehydration and operative rationing processes that can be corrected easily. The 6th in this group consists of a number of conditions that have been classified as autoimmune diseases, but should be looked at as a sort of cannibalistic process of resource management at the expense of the body's own tissues brought about by persistent dehydration. And I'm going to explain another one of those, pain in the joints. There's water in your bones. Your bones are made of water. So the body pulls the water out of your joints, and the first thing you do is, I got joint pain, back pain, arthritis. I don't understand why. You go to the doctor, he can't explain it. But if you would drink enough water on a consistent basis, the problem would alleviate. Can you see that? These drought management program, number 1 on the list is asthma. Number 2 is allergies. The same people who suffer from asthma generally suffer from allergies. Have you noticed that? The same people who suffer from asthma have allergies. 3 is hypertension. If they don't correct the problem, they're moving on to high blood pressure later in life. 4 is constipation. Now, notice how far down the list constipation is. And I have tended to view constipation as a rather early sign, haven't you? But based upon this drought management program echelon, constipation is down there later. So by the time you start noticing disturbance in your bowels, you are severely dehydrated. But not irreversibly so, but damage is beginning to perhaps most likely begin to set in. Then comes type 2 diabetes. You know, diabetes is so prevalent in our society that most people have it. Did you realize that? Most people have diabetes or pre-diabetes or pre-diabetes, those two. Most people fall within that A1C of, I think, what is this, 7 or above? I had my A1C checked the other day. It was 5.2 when I went to the VA for my annual physical. 5.2. They looked at me and said, what is he eating? And there was a Seventh-day Adventist nurse there who was there when they disfellowshipped me. And she admitted to the people, she said, well, he's a Seventh-day Adventist and he lives this message. Now, what a rebuke to her. Oh, I'm sorry. Number 3, 6 on the list is autoimmune diseases. We'll talk about that in just a few moments. But the third category is the more drastic emergency indicators of local dehydration. When these things begin to set in, it's really, really late in the day and you suffer damage. After much clinical and scientific research, my understanding is this: depending on the location of acid buildup inside the cells, the following forms of pain are early indicators of potential genetic damage produced by chronic dehydration in the body. 1, heartburn. 2, dyspeptic pain. 3, anginal pain. 4, lower back pain. 5, rheumatoid joint pains, including ankylosing spondylitis. And I know that's a large word. It just simply means you have back pain, upper back pain, lower back pain that will not resolve. It comes and it goes. It usually gets worse. They can't do anything with it. Don't know what it is. They'll tell you that ankylosing spondylitis, they don't know what causes it. 6, migraine headaches. 7, colitis pain. 8, fibromyalgic pain. 9, bulimia. 10, morning sickness during pregnancy. That one is surprising to me. There is a further set of conditions that represent complications, tissue transformation, and organ damage by persistent dehydration in the 4th dimension, which is time. And so I want to focus on the category of dehydration that we just discussed that deals with mental states and how many people are laying on the couch, going through therapy, having problems in their life that can't seem to resolve, not be able to have their fuzzy mind and not clear-headed. Many in mental institutions, many walking around on the street mumbling. We go through cities and we stop at the corner and we look, and when we're in the car, when we see the person mumbling, we lock our door. When they get close to the car, you hit the lock button, you make sure your door is locked. And then once you feel safe and secure inside of your little bubble, you'll begin to analyze the person. And you notice that they'll be mumbling. And you wonder, what song are they singing? What thing is on their mind? Well, in many instances, these individuals are severely dehydrated and their brains have begun to become prune-like as opposed to plum-like. Now let's dig down into the signals of dehydration. Remember that first one. 1, feeling tired without plausible reason. Water is the main source of energy formation in the body. In other words, our bodies are hydroelectric. like a hydroelectric plant. We produce electricity. That is our source of energy. So remember the discussion on caffeine? So we feel tired. What do? Most of us, most people, we go get an energy drink. I took an energy drink years ago. I was driving from one state to another on the East Coast, going up to some place to do a lecture on health, Don and I. And I knew better. Now I paid a price. Don said, Tara, don't do that. She said, just get a drink of water and step outside the car and exercise. I said, no, Donna, no, we got to get there. I gotta get it. Let me take care of this. So I went in there and got one of those energy rushes, And I said, well, look, I need to really stay awake. I drunk 2. It was 3 days before I could go to sleep. And when I finally went to sleep, I slept for 4. And I had all kind of heart palpitations and all kind of things was going on in my body. There is no shortcut. If you're tired, you have to go to sleep. If you're lacking water, you have to drink water. There's no substitute. So water being the main source of energy formation in our bodies, even the food that is supposed to be a good source of energy has no value to the body unless it is hydrolyzed by water and energized in the process. Furthermore, the energy source for neurotransmission and for the operational directives that get things done is hydroelectricity, which is formed in the nerve pathways, and that connection to the muscles and joints in the body is undeniable. And there's another undeniable thing, friend. If you are tired because you're lacking water, your body often misinterprets that as hunger. So you're really thirsty, but guess what you do? You go eat. And you keep eating, and you keep eating, and guess what happens then? You can't eat all that food and stay thin, so you begin to gain weight. So the cure then, in many instances for obesity, is the proper hydration of the body. Because the body, hunger signal and thirst signal often are the same in the brain, and the person doesn't know the difference. I'll tell you another signal that is often confused and confusing in the brain. After about 2 hours to 3 hours after you eat, your body is about done, your stomach is about done digesting the food. When the stomach is done, it's tired. And naturally so, it's done its job. But we often misinterpret that tired sensation for hunger. And you know what we do? We'll begin to snack. We'll begin to snack about 3 hours after we eat. If we would just go drink some water, the hunger sensation will go away. Now, I do want to emphasize now the part that our neurons play in this, and habit, the part that habit plays in this. I want you to listen very carefully, friends. Our brain cells are called neurons. On the end of these neurons, there's something called dendrites. They're like Velcro. They link one brain cell to another brain cell. If you would look at your brain under an MRI, it's moving. Your brain is moving inside of your skull. It doesn't just sit still, it moves. When you think a thought, your neural synapses, those dendrites, come together. When you stop thinking that thought, they separate. Now listen, for thoughts that we think repetitively, they connect and stay connected. That's a habit. So say I have a habit of not drinking enough water, where those dendrites have connected in my neural synapses. And so I've made a pathway now, a habit of not drinking water. And this is true for addiction, drinking, smoking, overeating, sexual addictions, pornography, any addiction. Your brain accustoms itself to the thoughts you continuously think. Remember the reading Sister Jones gave us, the body is fearfully and wonderfully made. So then You better be careful what activities you engage in, because they're going to become habit. Speaking to lay people, but speaking to scientific people, your dendrites and your neural synapses will connect and fuse. And then you have not only a theoretical problem, you have a actual anatomical, physiological problem. Only God can break those connections. You need divine power then. Remember New Start, trusting in divine power? You need divine power then to break these bad habits. And so, then we need to be very careful what activities we engage in. If we feed it, it grows. And when you hear many people say, I don't have the power to stop doing that, I've tried and I can't, we need to understand and be able to explain to them that their feelings are true, that they do not have the power to overcome these overmastering habits, and that they are strongholds in their lives. And as God's people, we should be able to answer the question as to how they can overcome. Remember, when Jesus healed the blind man, where did he send him to? Did he send him home? He sent him to the temple. And he told him to go show himself to who? The leper, rather, to go himself to the priest. Why? Because the priest is supposed to be the one who is to explain all these things to you. But if the minister doesn't know himself, how can the blind lead the blind except both fall in a ditch? It is very important that we understand these things. If Jesus was here today, he's here in the spirit. He is, I believe that. Not because I feel it, which I do, but we're standing on his word. It is no denial of faith to use natural remedies. When the man was blind, Jesus spit in the clay and rubbed it in his eye. Jesus could have said immediately, your sight is restored to you. But he didn't. He used natural remedies to restore the sight to the blind man. What Jesus was not just saying something to the blind man, Jesus was saying something to you and to me. He was telling you, he's telling me, we need to use natural remedies. In order to use natural remedies, we have to become aware of what they are and how they work. Well, feeling flushed, hot flashes. When the body is dehydrated and the brain cannot draw sufficient water from the circulation to satisfy its needs, it commands a proportionate dilation of the blood vessels that reach it. Listen, furthermore, the face is not a simple organ that supports two eyes, a mouth, a nose, two ears. It is a receptor dish with an abundant supply of nerve endings that constantly monitor the environment and report their information to the brain. So put in layman's term, your brain is like a satellite receiver. Your face is like a satellite receiver, a satellite dish. But it's not the receiver. The brain is. You know, your eyes really don't see. In fact, the images that come inside of your brain through your eyes are upside down. Your brain has to invert the light. That all your eyes do is gather light. They gather light, and it is your retina. Is that not the retina? Your retina that interpret the light. Same thing with your ears. Same thing with your taste. Your taste buds are receptors to tell your stomach what you're eating, how much hydrochloric acid to produce, how long it's going to take to digest it. So then we ought to chew our food slowly, mix it very well with saliva, and give the brain time enough to tell the stomach what's coming. Going back to obesity, this would help there too, because many times we chew and swallow the food before the brain can register it, and so it hadn't registered anything at all. And so guess what? We still are. We're still hungry. and so guess what we keep doing? We keep eating. We keep eating, and we keep eating. Then pretty soon this becomes habit, back to those synapses. Now we got a double problem, and we're just going down, down, down with no seeming solution. And we go to church. And we go to the fellowship dinner after church, and we look on the table, and there's nothing there in most instances to really help me. In God's house. And so the nerve endings of the face and all the organs that bring in the stimuli, the eyes, the nose, the nasal passages, they get dry real quickly. The ears, they need to be hydrated too. Hence the increased circulation to the face at the same time as the brain gets its increased blood supply. So if you're dehydrated, the brain, remember we used the analogy of the brain being the hospital, the stomach being the playground. So the brain gets its rush of blood to make sure it gets its hydration, and the face is flush. And you have those hot flashes in the middle of the night. And you go to the doctor, they can't tell you why you're having hot flashes. What they say is you're going through menopause. It will pray for you. They might not even say the latter, but they'll definitely say the former. They'll tell you that you're going through, and they may prescribe you some kind of things to tinker around the edges of the symptoms, but it's something that you're going to have to experience, they say, because it's just a natural part of the aging process. No, not a natural part of the aging process. It's a natural part of dehydration. If you see someone with a red nose, remember Jimmy Durante? Remember him? Some of us old enough to remember Jimmy Durante. And flushed face, often seen in alcoholics, because alcohol truly dehydrates the brain, leading to hangover headaches. That person is dehydrated and in need of water, and that's the first thing they'll get. And now, if you notice these alcohol selling entities who advertise on television, they'll say to drink responsibly. You watching the news and up pops a commercial, drink responsibly. What they're really saying, Brother Blakeney, is they want you to drink longer. So they'll tell you to drink water in between your shots so you'll last longer and drink more. And they'll make more money. We live in a capitalistic society with all the positives and the negatives that ensue. And so let's look at the third one as our time wanes. Feeling irritable and unreasonably short-tempered. Now, we have all gone through this. The speaker, number one. I've been known to, cut things short. I have been known to do that. And we have to admit that. I mean, the Lord said, confess one to another. We have to be honest about where we are. I'm better at it now. I'm much better at it now. And I noticed that I'm better at it because I'm drinking more water. I'm more thoroughly hydrated than in years past. And Donna's over there smiling because she knows, especially when I walk on the job site and I see my guys standing around. That really sends me. That really, and I know you. We don't. I mean, But on the job site, that is tolerable. But in the marriage relationship, if you come in the house with a clouded brow and you're short-tempered and your wife wants a explanation of what happened all day long, and you had time for everybody else, but you can't go in there and sit down and talk for 30 minutes, you're going to hear about that. You're going to hear about that. And so you should. And so lots of times God tells us that if we just have faith, we can move mountains. Look at the mountains we've described today. And look at the simple means and the simple remedies that would keep marriages together. I wonder how many marriages have dissolved because either one or both parties weren't drinking enough water and couldn't explain why they couldn't stand the other person. Irreconcilable difference. You know, the lawyer can't explain your problem any better than the doctor can. So when you write up your case before the judge, they can't say, oh, he's dehydrated. So they just simply say, oh, well, it's irreconcilable difference. We don't know what happened here. They can't stand each other. When in reality, they would have stayed together had they drank 8 glasses of water every day. Well, it's something to think about. Irritability. Now listen, let's go. Now that is the practical. Let's look at the scientific. Irritability is a cop-out process so as not to engage in a brain energy consuming involvement beyond that particular moment. When you go in and you talk to your wife about the day's activities, that's going to require a lot of energy. And the brain says, I don't have energy for that. And you agree. So instead of overriding that impulse, you say, baby, please, can we just talk about this later? And it's every day that you do that. So you're copping out because your brain doesn't have the energy that it needs. Remember, the brain and the body works on hydroelectric energy. So you don't have it. So you have moved beyond your bandwidth. You ever hear people say, oh, I don't have the bandwidth for that. Now, they're using a technological term to describe an emotional state or physiological state. They say, I don't have the bandwidth to deal with that. What they're really saying is, I can't deal with that right now. I just can't process it. And so as a result, they give up. They give irritable people. You become irritable. Now, listen, give irritable people a couple of glasses of water, and you will see them calm down and become fairly amiable if they're irritable. You know, Donna, well, I won't say that, but it was just so I don't want to talk about my arms and what I do, but I think I can do this without the Lord, violating anything. When Don and I come across homeless people on the road, unless we're going to get in some kind of accident, we always try to give them a little piece of money and a steps to Christ. Now we do that because we know we can't relieve their financial depravity, but we can give them a meal, enough money to get a meal and get off the street for a while. But we started adding something to that. We started giving them a bottle of water too, because many of them are out there thirsty and dehydrated. And what they really need more than anything else is water. So don't forget, the Bible says, if you give a person a glass of water, remember what Jesus said? You will be rewarded for that. There's a reason why the Lord said that. Now I want to deal with 2 more items here. And of course, we're not going to get all the way through this. And I want to allow time for discussion because I feel like there'll be some statements made. 4 is feeling anxious. We're talking now about anxiety. That's a big one. You go to the psychologist, most of the time the diagnosis is they have anxiety. Many people anxious about being anxious. Many folk anxious about just being sick. They're scared they're going to get sick. Not really sick, just anxious, just scared, right? This is the brain saying that its frontal part reflects its concern over water shortage in its domain of activity. I cannot imagine a more eloquent way for the thinking brain to reflect its anxiety about dehydration in the body of its delinquent owner. Obviously, when the body wanted water, it must have been given something else that did not satisfy its real needs. So you wait late to feel the thirst sensation, and when you finally feel that, you give it an orange soda or a Dr. Pepper or a tea or some fruit juice. And the brain gets nervous and said, I'm telling this guy I'm thirsty, and he's sending me down fruit juice. I need water. So it panics. That's the brain's way of saying, hey, I need water. Finally, our last item for the day, but by no means have we even scratched the surface, is feeling dejected and inadequate. Many people feel dejected and inadequate, and they try to prove their adequacy. They try to show you that they're up to par. That's the reaction. If you feel less than, you try to prove that you're equal to. And oftentimes, they'll try to blow out the next man's candle because theirs isn't burning. But blowing out the next man's candle isn't going to make yours burn any more brightly. You have to get to the source of why you have these feelings of inadequacy, why you feel dejected, why you feel less than. The capital assets of any body are its essential amino acid reserves. These types of amino acids are used in so many different biological functions, including, as we have talked about today, neurotransmission. Their shortage in the body means loss of assets that the brain assesses as insufficient and inadequate for its undertakings. Dehydration depletes some of these amino acids incessantly, and this shortage triggers feelings of dejection and feelings of depression. Now, it's separated here into two categories because dejection comes first. Fear, some form of fear comes first. And because anxiety is just fear. Let's put it where it's at. Fear. If you look at those who are found in the lake of fire, I believe the first category is the fearful. I may be mistaken, but I think the first category in the lake of fire is the fearful. The fearful. But when we fear something, we become depressed. Why? Because we can't change the source of our fear. We don't know what it is. It's amorphous. We can't identify why we are fearful. And Sister Jones checking up on me. Thank you, Sister Jones. This feeling of depression heralds a more serious phase of dehydration, in which the body, in absence of water, has to use up some of its vital assets as antioxidants to cope with the toxic waste of metabolism that has not been cleared by sufficient urine production. Don't forget that water not only hydrates, but it flushes away the waste. So the body has to use the amino acids over again to help remetabolize waste products. These acids include the amino acids tryptophan and tyrosine, which are sacrificed in the liver as antioxidants to neutralize toxic waste. For the manufacture of serotonin, melatonin, tryptamine, and indolamine, the brain uses tryptophan. All of these elements are vital neurotransmitters that are used to balance and integrate body functions. If they are inadequate in the body, depression sets in. Tyrosine is another amino acid that the brain uses to manufacture adrenaline, noradrenaline, and dopamine, which are the go-getter neurotransmitters. Their insufficient activity will ground a person into inactivity and a sorrowful state of mind. You won't feel good. An article on depression in the Washington Post of Tuesday, May 7th, 2002, revealed a deep-rooted deception by the pharmaceutical industry. Headline: against depression, a sugar pill is hard to beat. The article exposes how the drug industry has bent the truth in clinical trials to show an edge in favor of Prozac, Paxil, and Zoloft, whereas a simple sugar pill, a placebo, produced more positive results in relieving depression. This article surmises that the splendid results of the sugar pill against the much touted drugs could be because in the clinical trials, the subjects received much more attention and care than a depressed person who visits the doctor for a few minutes a month. It seems there is an infinitely greater healing power within a person who is cared for. In medicine, there used to be a dictum, now forgotten, quote, "The duty of a doctor is to amuse the patient while nature heals him." Doctors have to show empathy to their patients. Oftentimes, if an individual is depressed, proper hydration is good. Also, paying attention to the person, listening to them. Don't discount the way they're feeling, even though it may sound, strange or foolish to you. Take time out. And we'll continue this some other time. Perhaps next month we'll see what the Lord does and what he has us to do. But for now, I would like to thank all of you for joining with us and allow you to make any questions or comments that you may have. The line is open.
But I'm going to make a comment.
Dr.
In other words, it's a very important text here. I always thought about this text here. It's very, very important. In other words, the heading of this text, it says, greetings. Chapter 1, 3 John says, the elder unto the well-beloved Gaius, whom I love in the truth. Beloved, I wish above all things that thou mayest prosper and be in health, even as thy soul prospers. For I rejoiced greatly when the brethren came and testified of the truth that is in thee, even as thou walkest in the truth. I have no greater joy than to hear that my children walk in truth. May the Lord have rich blessings in reading his word.
Amen. Thank you. The Lord is interested in our physical health. Thank you, Brother Jones. And Brother Jones, I heard you out there.
Yeah, Dr. Jones, I just want to run this by everybody in case they don't know. When you're buying water, you got to know what you're buying. Make sure it says spring water, not purified water. Because when you buy purified water, the way they process it, all the minerals is out of that water. So make sure it says spring water.
That's very good, Mr. Jones. I want to read something now along those lines from the Entering Wedge. You're right on point there. This is on page 51, the water in Eden. We are told that in the Garden of Eden, man's divinely designed home, there was but one kind of water. It was not from a well or from a roof, but from a spring. Yet it formed the river that watered the garden. Plainly then, spring water is the natural, the best to drink. But beware of false springs which issue not from a clean reservoir, but from someone's cesspool or septic tank. Spring water from clean sources is even better when obtained a little farther down than the spring itself, because while rippling down the hill, the water becomes oxidized and thus lighter. And besides being further purified, it receives added life as the sun's rays beat upon it. And so we see that spring water is the best water from a pure source that we can drink. That was page 51, back Entering Wedge. And that was in response to Uncle Bobby's statement on spring water, just verifying that. Are there any more questions or comments, friends? Thank you. Thank you both, Brother Joneses. Thank both of you. Sister Kerr.
Yes, thank you so much, Brother Jones. Was this reading all from that book, You're Not Sick, You're Thirsty?
Yes, it was bits of it and then my own comments added in.
Thank you. And then
Yes,
the
it
other
is an
two
excellent.
comments.
I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
It is an excellent book. I recommend everybody get access to it if they possibly can. It will change your thinking about dehydration and what truly constitutes dehydration. Thank you.
So then I had two comments. One is about salt and one is about juicing. Now with salt, there's a discussion out there that if we take a grain of salt, like Celtic salt or Himalayan salt, that it induces us to drink more water. And so I thought I would comment that. And then with the juicing, of course, we are in a generation and age where there's lacking so much minerals in our diet. And so the juicing helps us to hydrate. And of course, we can drink the juice between the meals because it's not a roughage that we have to digest. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Yeah, they're both excellent. I'll deal with the second part first. If you drink a juice that has been taken through a juicerator machine, for example, then it's digested. All you have to do is drink it. And it, in instances where people have cancer and different diseases that are taxing the body's systems to the maximum and they're already weak and sick, that's an easy way to get nutrition in without requiring much deficit from the body's energy resources. Now, first part of that statement is very profound. When Sister Kerr, you mentioned a little salt, a grain or two of salt in water. Around the cells are sodium pumps. And you know that water follows salt. If you eat peanuts, like boiled peanuts, down here in Georgia, we love boiled peanuts. So if you eat boiled peanuts, what's the first thing you do? You're thirsty because water follows salt, not just in the macro, but in the micro. So in the cells in the body, those little sodium pumps outside the cells, when the salt, just small amounts of salt are taken in, then the body brings the water behind it inside the cell. And inside the cell, hydration takes place. Remember, there's water in the body in two places, inside the cell and outside the cell. It's important to have water outside the cell, but even more important to have water inside the cell because that's where the organs function inside the cells. That is that first part of your question, your statement, your contribution, Sister Kirk, very important. Must have hydration inside the cells. When I did my clinicals at Phoebe Putney, I was in the cardiac suite when Dr. Roberts, who, interestingly enough, died of a heart attack, but he was a renowned cardiologist. And this was before they used, now when they do valve replacements, you know, they can do those through a catheter now. But this was back in the early 90s, and you had to do open heart surgery and actually open and remove the heart out of the body and put a pig valve in and then sew it back up. Well, you know, you can't remove the heart if it's beating. So what they did, they put the person on a heart-lung machine and deprived them from sodium. And you know what the heart did? It stopped beating. And then they did what he had to do. He put the heart back on the table, and he had these little defibrillators about the size of the tool a dentist might use when he looks in your mouth. But they were electrical paddles carrying 360 joules. I mean, if you touch them, they would shock you. He said, step back. I was standing right over his shoulder watching this. And when he hit the heart, it wouldn't start. It wouldn't start. So he had them administer potassium and sodium. And it wasn't long. He hit it again. And you know what happened? The heart started beating again. So a lot of people are suffering from heart disease. Here we go. Just back to dehydration. Coming right back full circle on the point that Sister Kerr made. Sister Kerr, thank you for that. Are there any other questions or comments? Well, if not, I thank all of you, and we will close our meeting today with a word of prayer. Sister Ariel Jones, would you close us in prayer?
Yeah, sure. Okay, I'll give everybody a little second to kneel down and bow your heads and close your eyes. Okay. Father God, Lord Jesus, I thank you for waking us up this morning, putting clothes on our backs, and providing us with the food to eat, to nourish our bodies. I thank you for that wonderful message my father delivered today. I thank you for speaking through him. I ask that you protect us as we go out and into the world. And we know it's danger out there, but we know that we trust in you and we lean and depend on you to keep us safe, Lord. I ask that you guide us to the path of righteousness, Lord, and just give us the insight, Lord Jesus, that we need in order to maintain this thing that we call life. And in your son's name I pray. Hallelujah. Amen.
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 Thank you so much.
Amen.
God bless all of you until we meet again. Thank all of
All right.
Half ounce of water for each pound you weigh.
you. For each pound you weigh. At the minimum.
Minimum. Okay.
At the minimum.
Half ounce for each pound.
Half ounce for each pound.
Okay.